Did you know that a seemingly healthy fruit, eaten by millions of people every day, could be silently increasing your risk of having a stroke? Just imagine you wake up, have your breakfast with a generous glass of natural juice, believing you're taking care of your health, when in fact, you might be feeding a hidden danger. Doctors and specialists are sounding the alarm. Excessive consumption of this fruit may be directly linked to a higher chance of stroke, one of the greatest silent enemies of our health. But after all, what fruit is this? Why is it so dangerous when consumed in excess? And what does science already know about this connection? Stay with me until the end of this video because the answer will surprise you. Before revealing the fruit at the center of this controversy, it's essential to understand the bigger picture: the cerebrovascular accident, or simply stroke. This condition, often referred to as a brain attack, is today one of the leading causes of death and disability worldwide. According to the World Health Organization, around 15 million people suffer a stroke every year. Of these, 5 million do not survive, and another 5 million are left with permanent disabilities, such as difficulty walking, speaking, seeing, or even performing basic tasks. In USA, the situation is also alarming. It is estimated that every 5 minutes, someone suffers a stroke. In other words, while you watch this video, dozens of North American families are being impacted by this serious problem. Stroke does not choose age, gender, or social class. Although it is more common in people over 50, it can also affect young adults and even those considered healthy. The most striking detail is that a large portion of cases could be prevented. That's because many of the risk factors are linked to daily choices: high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, physical inactivity, obesity, smoking, and of course, diet. The way we eat can significantly reduce or increase the chances of having a stroke. And here comes the point that shocks many people. We grew up believing that fruit is always healthy, in any quantity and in any form of consumption. This idea was reinforced by advertising campaigns, by popular recommendations, and even by phrases repeated in schools and doctors' offices. But what recent research has shown is that this is not entirely true. Yes, fruits bring enormous benefits, but some of them, when consumed in excess or in inappropriate forms, can become harmful. And this contradiction is what has caught the attention of doctors worldwide. After all, how can something natural, full of vitamins and antioxidants, represent such a serious health risk? To understand this, we need to dive into how the body works during a stroke and then analyze how certain types of sugar found in fruits may be involved in this process. So, let's start from the beginning. What really happens inside the body during a stroke? There are two main types of cerebrovascular accidents. The first is the ischemic stroke, responsible for about 80% of cases. It occurs when a clot or a fatty plaque blocks an artery that carries blood to the brain. This obstruction cuts off the flow of oxygen and nutrients to certain brain areas, and within minutes, cells begin to die. The longer it takes without treatment, the greater the damage and the more severe the after effects. The second type is the hemorrhagic stroke, which represents about 20% of cases. In this scenario, a blood vessel ruptures inside the brain, causing bleeding and increasing intracranial pressure. Hemorrhagic stroke is usually more severe and is often linked to uncontrolled high blood pressure. Now, picture the scene inside the brain. In a fraction of a second, an obstructed artery prevents blood from reaching its target, and the neurons in that region start to suffer. Within minutes, abilities such as speech, memory, vision, and movement may be compromised. But the big question is, why does this happen? Why do some vessels rupture and others clog? And more importantly, where does diet come into this equation? The answer lies in risk factors. High blood pressure, diabetes, high cholesterol, obesity, smoking, and a sedentary lifestyle create the perfect environment for vascular problems. And all of these can be directly influenced by diet. This is where the excessive consumption of certain sugars, including those found in fruits, comes into play. It may sound contradictory, but the truth is that the body does not distinguish much between the sugar in fruit and the sugar in dessert when both arrive in excess in the bloodstream. To better understand this, we need to talk about fructose, the natural sugar found in fruits. When consumed in moderate amounts, fructose can be properly metabolized by the liver and used as a source of energy. The problem arises when intake is excessive, especially in liquid form, such as in concentrated juices. In this situation, the liver becomes overloaded, turning the excess fructose into fat. This fat can build up in the liver itself, leading to fatty liver disease, or circulate in the blood as triglycerides. And what's the direct consequence of this? Increased risk of insulin resistance, higher triglyceride levels, and a greater likelihood of fatty plaques forming in the arteries. And guess where these plaques can settle? Exactly in the arteries that supply the brain. It's no coincidence that studies show people with high triglyceride levels have a higher risk of stroke. And here lies the dangerous link. Consuming certain fruits in excess, especially in juice form, can trigger this silent process that, over time, prepares the ground for a stroke. But which fruit is at the center of this warning? Before revealing it, think with me. Which is one of the most consumed fruits in juice form, found in homes, schools, and even hospitals, often associated with health and well-being? If you thought of grapes, you're right. Yes, grapes are one of the fruits most cited by specialists when it comes to excess natural sugar. A single 200 milliliter glass of whole grape juice can contain up to 30 grams of sugar. For comparison, that equals about 7 teaspoons of sugar. And the scariest part? In some cases, that amount is even higher than what you'd find in a glass of regular soda. Now, let's reflect. If an adult or even a child drinks a glass of grape juice every day believing they are taking care of their health, that person is actually ingesting a daily sugar load that, in the long run, may contribute to insulin resistance, increased triglycerides, and consequently, a higher risk of stroke. But before demonizing grapes, it's crucial to highlight an important detail. The problem is not the fruit itself, but the excess. Grapes are rich in antioxidants, such as resveratrol, which can bring benefits to the heart. However, as with any food, the dose is what makes the difference between remedy and poison. What specialists are warning about is precisely the excessive consumption, especially in the form of concentrated juice. And here's a practical comparison to help you understand. Eating 10 or 15 grapes throughout the day is one thing. Drinking a glass of juice that contains the equivalent of 60 grapes at once is something completely different. The impact on the body is much greater, and that's exactly what turns a healthy food into a potential risk. Now that we've revealed grapes as the protagonist of this warning, it's time to understand why exactly they, along with some other fruits rich in fructose, can become a problem when consumed in excess. Let's start by looking inside the body. Imagine the following scene. You drink a glass of pure grape juice at breakfast. Within minutes, that sweet liquid floods your bloodstream with glucose and fructose. The pancreas, a small organ located behind the stomach, quickly detects the sugar spike and releases insulin, the hormone responsible for carrying glucose into the cells. So far, so good. The problem arises when this happens every day, repeatedly, and in large quantities. The body begins to lose sensitivity to insulin, a phenomenon known as insulin resistance. When this occurs, glucose remains in the bloodstream for longer, damaging blood vessels and creating silent inflammation. And here's the most concerning part. This chronic inflammation is one of the main culprits for the hardening and clogging of the arteries, a process called atherosclerosis. Over time, this condition increases the risk not only of stroke, but also of heart attacks and other cardiovascular diseases. A study published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology showed that people with elevated triglyceride levels, which can rise specifically due to excess fructose consumption, are nearly twice as likely to suffer an ischemic stroke. Another study, conducted at Harvard University, followed more than 70,000 women for 18 years. Those who regularly consumed fruit juices rich in natural sugars had a significantly higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes, one of the main triggers for stroke. And here lies the key. It's not just table sugar that's concerning. The natural sugar from fruit, when isolated and concentrated, can have a similar effect on the body. That's why experts insist on differentiating between eating whole fruit and drinking juice. In whole fruit, fiber plays a protective role. It slows sugar absorption, prevents glucose spikes, and supports gut health. In juice, however, these fibers are virtually gone. What's left is a sweet liquid, rapidly absorbed, that drastically raises glucose and fructose levels in the blood. But you might be wondering, so should I never drink grape juice again? Experts give a clear answer. There's no need to eliminate it, but moderation is essential. The danger lies in quantity and frequency. To give you an idea, the World Health Organization recommends that the intake of added and free sugars, which includes concentrated fructose from juices, should not exceed 25 grams per day for adults. Remember that a single glass of grape juice can contain up to 30 grams? That's right. With just one serving, you're already over the daily limit. Now, let's broaden this reasoning. Grapes are not the only fruit that can be problematic in excess. Mango, for example, is delicious, tropical, and much loved in Brazil, but it also carries a high load of fructose. A single mango can have up to 45 grams of sugar. Figs, another sweet fruit, can reach 16 grams in just 100 grams of portion. Bananas, often considered practical and healthy, also deserve attention. A medium banana has about 14 grams of sugar. If you eat 3 bananas throughout the day, you're ingesting almost the same amount of sugar as a can of soda. And here's an important reminder. We're not saying these fruits are villains. They're rich in vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. But in excess, especially within an unbalanced diet, they can turn into silent triggers for serious diseases. Now let's contrast this scenario with fruits that have a more favorable profile. Studies show that berries, like strawberries, blackberries, and blueberries, are associated with a lower risk of stroke. Not only do they contain less sugar, but they're also rich in antioxidants and bioactive compounds that protect brain cells. A famous example is the blueberry. Harvard University research indicates that regular blueberry consumption can reduce the risk of cognitive decline and vascular problems in the brain by up to 34%. The secret lies in compounds called anthocyanins, which have anti-inflammatory power and improve blood circulation. Another example is the orange. Despite containing fructose, the whole orange provides fiber, vitamin C, and flavonoids that help lower blood pressure and protect blood vessels. Once again, the issue is juice. A freshly squeezed glass of orange juice can carry 20 grams of sugar and almost no fiber. And this is where confusion often arises. It's not enough to know which fruit to eat. It's also necessary to know how to eat it. The form of consumption can completely change its impact on the body. To make this even clearer, let's use a practical comparison. Eating a whole apple equals about 15 grams of sugar, but with 4 grams of fiber. This generates satiety and keeps glucose stable. Drinking a glass of pure apple juice made from 3 apples equals 45 grams of sugar with no fiber at all. The metabolic effect is completely different. This distinction is crucial to understanding the medical warning. The problem isn't just the fruit itself, but the dietary context, the form of consumption, and frequency. To reinforce this point, it's worth mentioning a study published in the British Medical Journal. Researchers followed nearly 200,000 people and found that regular fruit juice consumption was associated with an 8% increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes, while whole fruit consumption was linked to up to a 23% reduction in risk. In other words, we're looking at numbers that can't be ignored. They clearly show, based on science, that there's a gap between what we think is healthy and what actually protects our health. Now let's reflect. How many times have you seen someone swap soda for grape juice, believing they're making a healthier choice? How many times in hospitals, schools, or gyms is natural juice served as a synonym for health? Yet this very practice may be silently contributing to rising cases of diabetes, obesity, hypertension, and consequently, strokes. And it doesn't stop there. Another worrying detail is child consumption. Kids who drink fruit juice every day are being exposed to extremely high doses of sugar from their earliest years. Studies show this habit is linked to rising childhood obesity and a greater likelihood of developing cardiovascular diseases in adulthood. A study by the American Academy of Pediatrics revealed that children who consume fruit juice daily are at significantly higher risk of gaining excess weight. This proves the problem isn't only immediate, but also a negative investment in future health. And when we bring stroke back into the picture, the risk becomes even more concerning. A body that grows up accustomed to high circulating sugar levels has a much higher chance of developing insulin resistance and hypertension in youth, paving the way for serious diseases even earlier in life. Let's tie this reasoning with one final fact. According to the Pan American Health Organization, average sugar intake in Latin America already exceeds twice the limit recommended by the WHO. And a large share of this comes precisely from sugary beverages, including industrialized juices and even 100% natural ones. Given this scenario, it becomes clear why doctors are issuing increasingly strong warnings. Excessive consumption of fruits rich in fructose, especially in liquid form, is a real, concrete, and silent risk. A risk that can cost not only quality of life, but life itself. But don't panic. The good news is that Just as this risk is built over the years, it can also be reversed through conscious choices. And that's exactly what we'll discuss in the next sections. Which fruits are allies of brain health? How to balance your diet? And which habits can drastically reduce the chances of a stroke? So far, we've talked about how the excessive consumption of certain fruits, especially in juice form, can silently raise the risk of stroke. But to make this warning even clearer, let's hear what doctors and researchers around the world have to say. Dr. Walter Willett, professor of nutrition and epidemiology at Harvard University, has stated in studies that the consumption of whole fruits is clearly associated with health benefits, but replacing them with juices brings considerable risks, particularly when it comes to diabetes and cardiovascular disease. This statement sums up the reasoning of many experts. The problem isn't the fruit itself, but the way we consume it. Brazilian cardiologist Dr. Carlos Daniel Magnoni from the Hart Hospital in São Paulo explains that excess fructose can increase fat deposits in the liver and raise triglyceride production. According to him, this process, in the long run, compromises vascular health and raises the risk of stroke and heart attack. Another key figure is Dr. Frank Hu, also from Harvard, who has published multiple studies showing that sweetened beverages, including juices, are linked to increased premature mortality from cardiovascular disease. In his words, the body does not recognize liquid sugar the same way it recognizes solid sugar. This leads to glucose spikes, metabolic overload, and serious consequences for blood vessels. Researchers at Oxford University reinforce this warning. In a study of over 500,000 people in the UK, they found that each additional daily glass of fruit juice was linked to a significant increase in type 2 diabetes risk. Since diabetes is one of the main risk factors for stroke, the link between excessive juice consumption and stroke becomes obvious and extremely dangerous. And the numbers don't stop there. According to the American Heart Association, keeping triglycerides within a healthy range is essential for reducing stroke risk. Yet, as we've seen, excess fructose is one of the main villains when it comes to high triglycerides. Now, let's translate this into practical language. Dr. Jose Carlos Quinalia, a neurologist specializing in cerebrovascular diseases, explains to his patients in simple terms, a glass of grape juice may seem harmless, but for the brain, it can represent a cumulative risk over the years. What begins as a seemingly healthy choice can silently prepare the ground for a stroke. These statements, coming from professionals with decades of experience, show that this warning is no exaggeration. It's based on solid evidence, repeatedly confirmed across different countries and populations. But it's important to note, not everything is a risk. Many fruits are powerful allies of brain and cardiovascular health. The secret lies in choice and balance. Let's start by busting a few myths. Myth 1. Fruit never harms. Truth. Fruits are essential in the diet, but excessive intake of some, especially those rich in fructose and consumed in liquid form, can pose risks. Myth 2. Fruit juice equals whole fruit. Truth. Juice loses fiber, concentrates sugar, and produces a completely different metabolic impact. It's like comparing a calm walk on the beach with being hit by a sudden wave. Myth 3. Dried fruits are healthier because they're natural. Truth. Dried fruits like raisins, dried figs, and apricots concentrate even more sugar. A small portion can equal several fresh fruits in glycemic load. Myth 4. If it's pure or whole, it's fine. Truth. Even pure or 100% juice with no added sugar can contain extremely high amounts of fructose. The label whole doesn't mean it has no metabolic impact. Now let's look at the positive side. Fruits rich in antioxidants and fiber can be real shields against stroke. Strawberries, for example, contain vitamin C, manganese, and flavonoids that help lower blood pressure. Blueberries, already mentioned, are famous for improving brain circulation and reducing inflammation. Apples, with their fiber-packed skin and quercetin, help lower bad cholesterol. Oranges, when eaten whole, provide vitamin C and hesperidin, a compound that protects blood vessels. A study from the University of East Anglia in the UK found that people who regularly consume citrus fruits like oranges and grapefruits have a 19% lower risk of ischemic stroke. The secret? Compounds called flavonoids, which strengthen vessel walls. Another interesting insight comes from Japanese research. In Japan, a country known for longevity, fruit consumption is moderate, almost always paired with other foods, and rarely in juice form. This cultural practice helps explain their lower stroke rates compared to Western countries. And here's a practical tip many doctors give in consultations. Always choose to chew the fruit. The act of chewing not only activates digestion, but also releases hormones that promote satiety. This lowers the risk of overeating and reduces blood glucose spikes. But what about those who are already used to drinking juice daily? What can they do? Experts suggest a gradual transition. Start by reducing the volume of juice and diluting it with water. For example, if you drink a full glass of grape juice every day, try drinking half a glass diluted with water. Then, on some days, swap it for a whole piece of fruit. Over time, your palate adapts and the change becomes a habit. Another strategy is always to pair fruit with a source of protein or healthy fat, like natural yogurt, oats, or nuts. This slows sugar absorption and lessens the metabolic impact. And why is all this so important? Because we're talking about a disease that gives no warning. Stroke, most of the time, happens suddenly, without prior signs. The only real prevention is taking care of risk factors every day. And diet is one of the most powerful pillars in that process. To reinforce this point even further, let's hear from clinical nutrition specialist Dr. Mariana Garay. She says, "Many patients proudly tell me they've swapped soda for fruit juice, but when we do the math, we see the sugar load is almost the same. We need to dismantle this idea that everything natural is harmless." Her words highlight the cultural challenge we're facing. For decades, we've linked fruit and juice to health without restrictions. Now, as science advances, we know it's time to refine and adjust that view. And this adjustment doesn't mean giving up pleasure. It means being aware that every food choice is an investment in future health. Eating whole fruit, diversifying the menu, avoiding excess, and, above all, understanding that not every juice equals well-being. So, up to this point, we've understood the risks, heard from experts, and seen clear examples of how improper consumption can increase stroke risk. But we're still missing one crucial piece: how to apply this knowledge in daily life, practically and realistically. And that's exactly what we'll explore in the next block, with prevention tips, practical meal examples, and strategies to protect both the brain and the heart. Before we get to the final conclusions, let me ask you a question that may have never crossed your mind. If one sweet fruit, when eaten in excess, can increase the risk of stroke, could there actually be a fruit that does the opposite? A fruit that truly protects the brain against strokes and strengthens blood vessels? And the answer is yes. Science has already identified several fruits that work almost like a natural shield for our brain. The most impressive example comes from berries, such as blueberries, blackberries, and strawberries. These fruits are rich in anthocyanins, natural pigments responsible for their deep color and powerful antioxidant effect. They fight inflammation, improve circulation, and reduce the oxidation of LDL cholesterol, which is exactly the process that leads to plaque buildup in the arteries. A study conducted by the Harvard School of Public Health followed more than 90,000 women for almost 2 decades. The result was surprising. Those who regularly consumed berries had a 32% lower risk of suffering a stroke. This shows that, just as some foods can increase the danger, others can significantly reduce the chance of such a serious event. Another example comes from oranges. A study published in the journal Stroke by the American Heart Association revealed that frequent consumption of citrus fruits can lower the risk of ischemic strokes by up to 19%. The secret lies in flavonoids, compounds that improve vessel elasticity and help reduce blood pressure. And here's something even more interesting. A simple, common fruit like the apple also makes the list of brain protectors. Dutch research showed that people who regularly ate apples and pears had up to a 52% lower risk of stroke. The reason? A combination of fiber, quercetin, and other antioxidants. So here's the key point of curiosity. While some fruits in excess can represent a silent danger, others, when consumed in balance, are powerful allies against stroke. The key is balance, variety, and, most importantly, knowing how to choose wisely. Now that you know this, imagine the impact of reorganizing your fruit intake. By reducing excessive sweet juices like grape or mango juice and increasing your intake of fiber-rich, antioxidant-packed fruits, you could literally be reprogramming the future of your brain health. It's like trading Russian roulette for a bulletproof vest. It's time to wrap up everything we've discussed into a clear and practical plan you can apply to your own life. Let's recap the main points, and then I'll share straightforward recommendations you can start implementing at your very next breakfast. 1. Stroke is one of the leading causes of death and disability worldwide. Every 5 minutes, a Brazilian suffers a stroke. Every year, millions of people are left with permanent disabilities. It's a silent problem, it strikes without warning, but most cases can be prevented. 2. Nutrition is one of the most powerful factors in prevention. What you eat every single day can either increase or reduce your risk of stroke. That means the choice you make today, whether to have a glass of juice or a whole fruit, can directly shape your health 10, 20, or 30 years from now. 3. Not all fruits have the same impact. Grapes, for example, contain powerful antioxidants, but they also have a high concentration of fructose, especially when transformed into juice. Excessive consumption can raise triglycerides, promote insulin resistance, and increase stroke risk. 4. The problem lies in the form and the quantity. Whole fruit, eaten with its fiber and chewed slowly, brings benefits. Concentrated juice containing dozens of fruits in a single glass is an overload that stresses the metabolism. 5. Some fruits actually protect the brain. Blueberries, strawberries, blackberries, oranges, apples, and pears have all been shown in studies to significantly reduce stroke risk. Including these fruits in your diet is a powerful prevention strategy. Practical recommendations for your daily life. Always prefer whole fruit over juice. If you do drink juice, keep it to half a cup and ideally dilute it with water. Rotate your fruit choices throughout the week. Don't stick only to the sweetest ones. Pair fruit with protein or healthy fats like yogurt, oats, or nuts to lower the glycemic impact. Follow the WHO recommendation: 3 to 5 servings of fruit per day, remembering that one serving equals a medium-sized fruit like an apple or a banana. And remember, this isn't about banning grapes or any other fruit. The secret is moderation. Eating a handful of grapes throughout the day is healthy. Drinking a full glass of grape juice every day, believing it's a synonym for health, is where the risk lies. So here's the final message. Stroke does not choose time or place. It can happen at any moment and change an entire life in seconds. But what you choose today, right now, may be the decisive factor between being a victim or being protected. Take care of your diet. Question automatic habits. And most importantly, share this knowledge. Because if this information can help you, it could also save the life of someone you love. If you've made it this far, it means you truly care about your health and your future. So take the next step. Like this video, share it with your friends and family, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Here, you'll always find science-based information explained in a clear and practical way to transform your health and your life. And now I'll leave you with one final question. Which fruit will you choose for your next meal? The one that silently increases your risk, or the one that protects your brain against stroke? The decision is in your hands. How about a quick challenge? Comment below which fruit you enjoy the most when making juice, and don't forget to share this video with the people you love. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and stay tuned for the tips coming your way. I'm Dr. Lauren Hart, and I'll see you in the next video.